Christmas story. But it's not the Christmas story you've heard. It's not anything close to what you've seen or even read about. Because tonight, the Christmas story extends far beyond just the birth of Jesus. Tonight, it goes even further than now. It goes on forever. We all know that Jesus was born in a manger in Bethlehem. And at that moment, God came down to earth as a man. God came down as a little baby to save the world. It was foretold in the Scriptures before. We know that. We know the story of Jesus. We know He came to earth and what happened. But we don't realize how much that moment meant. How much that meant when Jesus came down as a baby. Not just to save the world, not just to save us, not just give us grace and mercy and die on the cross, but to give moments so we can talk about it, to give moments so things in the future can happen. We always look at the manger scene and we think about it, if we see the manger scene, and I've talked about it before, and some of y'all may not know this, so I'm going to say it and move on from it, but, when we see a manger scene and we get one on a little mantle or something, it's always baby Jesus, and then the three shepherds and three wise men, right? You know what it looks like. You may have an angel on top, you have Mary, Joseph, and some people around. If you did a little studying and did a little reading, you'd realize the wise men didn't come until 2 years later. They weren't there the night Jesus was born. The reason they do it like that is because it kind of makes the story shorter, but it also evens out the manger scene, so there's not just three shepherds here. It looks even for people who are anal and have to see things on both sides. But I'm being funny. But really, it's a symbolization that the wise men came. But here's the thing about it. Here's the funny thing about it. Mason, here's the funny thing about it. That as that one moment when Jesus was born, it took 2 years for the next moment to happen. It took time. But if Jesus was never born, then the wise men never would have come to see Him. The wise men never would have come to see baby Jesus and celebrate Christmas 2 years later. If they never celebrated 2 years later and saw baby Jesus, they wouldn't have gone back and spread the word about Jesus and spread the word about His birth, and there wouldn't be a Christmas. And so if there never was a Christmas spread, then things wouldn't happen as they are. And they wouldn't go as far as, I'm going to jump ahead quite a bit here, but I wanted to tell you this, and I was so excited, and I called Becca when I read this, and I was thinking, you know what? This is something cool, and there's a couple stories I want to tell you. But the first story I told you earlier, that, the guy wrote the song at his church for a Christmas Eve service because the pipe was broken. The pipes were broken. He wanted to write a Christmas carol that would go easily played with a guitar, but would have so much of an impact on people that it would cause them to worship that evening. So this is in Germany, and the song was originally in German, and eventually a British guy came across and heard the song translated into English, and it became an English song. And it's one of the most widely known Christmas songs ever. You remember I told you about that little church that washed away? Well, they actually built a memorial, a building, a chapel is what they called it. Like a little sanctuary. It's called the Silent Night Chapel. And built an actual museum up in honor of the song. Not because the song was so great, but because the song had so much of an effort of peace, so much unity, and it brought unity in their country, and unity with their people, and unity with anybody that sings it, that they knew that this song had power. It was not just a Christmas song. It was a song of worship and praise to God. Praise to Jesus for His birth. Now this guy wrote many other songs and other arrangements and did not realize that one song would be the one thing that noted it. They couldn't even find the original manuscript he wrote it on, but they found it. They've actually got it there in Germany, and I think it'd be cool to go see, because it's almost like going to see it. If you're like go to a Christmas museum, it's kind of like going to that. But little did he know that song he wrote that night in that chapel on Christmas Eve, because Christ was born. At that moment when he wrote those words on a piece of paper, what they have in effect for years to come. Now we'll jump ahead to 1914. Actually, I'm sorry, World War II, 1940. Sorry, I got my numbers mixed up. Good job, history guys. I'm a history guy, and I've got 1914 is the World War I. Actually, it is 1914. 1940, World War II. Good, thank you. I'm getting the Titanic mixed in there too. World War I. Okay. Well, imagine this. World War I. Germany and Britain are going at it, fighting it out. It's December the 24th, Christmas Eve, right? All these soldiers have been fighting and fighting and fighting on this field. Now, both sides celebrate Christmas. Both sides believe in Christmas. Both sides know what Christmas is. And I don't know if we can tell the story without crying because it's so powerful. And it's so neat to think that that one song written at that one moment can make this next moment possible. But that night, they ceased fire. They stopped firing, for the evening. And they made an agreement because it was Christmas Eve that they wouldn't fight. Now you're talking about two enemies with guns ready to shoot each other dead. And they said, we're going to have a Christmas Eve treaty. They called it, I'm trying to think what they called it. I'm trying to think of the exact name of it. It's kind of like a little pact they made between each other. A promise that they wouldn't shoot each other. They let the guys go out in their fields and pick up the bodies that had been killed and give them burials that night. The Germans helped the British move their bodies over. The British helped the Germans. They went across enemy lines on Christmas Eve because they knew it was a time of peace. They sat down and they started talking with each other. They realized that they had a lot more in common than they didn't know. And all of a sudden, one of them started singing, and they started singing these, started singing a Christmas carol. And then they finally got to another one, and guess what Christmas carol it was? Silent Night. And at that moment, two enemies who fought and fought and fought each other and were ready to kill each other, had guns so they could have killed each other dead right on the spot, sat together, traded stories about home, traded things about home, and sang Silent Night because that was the one Christmas carol that they knew in common they could sing to each other. Now guys, that moment right there is just, I'm a history guy. You learn, you know me. I'm a history buff. I love it. I eat it up. I watch PBS all the time. And the History Channel. I love it. Geography History is probably my favorite thing to watch when it comes on TVN. It's a great show. But if you look at it, if he had never written that song, who knows what might have happened that night? Because they probably been friends, they may have tried to communicate, but that one song right there, on a battlefield where they've been killing each other, united them together because he wrote that song for Christmas. Because Jesus was born. It's the Christmas story, but it's not just the Christmas story you heard. It's the Christmas story that keeps going on, not from Jesus, what Jesus did. He split time in two when he died, but right at that moment, everything was different, and there will be moments after. And here's the cool part about it: if they had never written that song, he'd never written a song, and they had never had peace, and had never heard that story, then I will be standing here at this moment right now telling you about that song. But you got to stick with it. You got to see that. Me telling you about that song links back to the time when they were fighting. And that moment links back to the time when he was writing that song. And that song links back to the time when the wise men came to see Jesus. And that song links back to the time when Jesus was born. And the shepherds. Christ just doesn't, Jesus is not, when I say Jesus is here to save, and we always think about Jesus dying at 13, and we say, he told us to go on and preach the gospel, he told us to do everything. We put so much emphasis on Easter and how that tells us to go when Jesus left, but if you look at the time he was born, you see that Even right now, at this moment, you're sitting here is affected because Jesus was born